Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. And we do apologize for the late start of the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. OCN police investigate alleged death threat to student by St. Elizabeth teacher. Mortality rate among babies on the decline. And later in sports, WADA looking to prevent missteps from local anti-doping authorities. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. The police and Office of the Children's Advocate have been called in to investigate an incident at Newell High School in St. Elizabeth where a teacher was captured on video verbally assaulting, chasing and threatening a student with death. Education and Youth Minister Favourable Williams has condemned the conduct of a teacher, saying the behaviour lowers the professionalism of the teaching sector. Mrs. Williams added that it was reported to her that the teacher has acted in a similar threatening manner towards other students. She says counselling and psychotherapy sessions will be offered to the students and the teacher. The board chairman has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow to address the matter. The fraud case against Antigua's Director of Public Prosecution, Anthony Armstrong, has been transferred to the Supreme Court in downtown. Director of Public Prosecutions Paula Llewellyn this morning entered a nolle prosequi to end the matter in the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court for it to move to the Supreme Court on a voluntary bill of indictment. The Ministry of Health is reporting a general reduction in the mortality rates among children. This is despite the challenges in the sector relating to dead babies at some hospitals. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Jacqueline Bisesa McKenzie says this is for perinatal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, as well as under 5 mortality rate.
For 2020, Jamaica's neonatal mortality rate was 13.8 per 1,000 live births. When we look at the 2015 to 2020 figures, we would have seen that in 2015 we were at 16 per 1,000 live births, and in 2020 we were at 13.8. So in the intervening years, we would have drops significantly in 2016, went up a little bit again in 2017, but the general trend is that we are going down in terms of these mortality ratios.
Dr. Bisesa McKenzie says the ministry also continues to work to increase the survival rate among newborns,
both in terms of improving access and improving quality of antenatal care, to decrease the likelihood of babies being born premature with congenital or birth defects or having other factors that make them vulnerable to illnesses, and also by improving our delivery rooms, our special care nurseries, high dependency units, and our neonatal intensive care units to care for these babies.
Preparations are in high gear for teachers who are expected to vote next week on the government's new wage offer. Sandra Williams reports.
On Tuesday, the Jamaica Teachers Association started its island-wide sensitization sessions at Marcus Garvey Technical High School in St. Anne. The move is to get teachers ready to vote on February 3 on the new wage offer from the Ministry of Finance under the new compensation scheme.
The teachers have heard for themselves, which was an objective on our part, for each teacher to have the opportunity to come and hear for him or herself what is on offer, and for them to now go ruminate, for them to reflect on same, even and very importantly pray, and then instruct their delegate as to how it is that individual ought to vote when that time comes on February 3rd of next week.
President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, LaSonia Harrison, says the JTA's response to the Finance Ministry will be determined based on feedback from its members. Mrs. Harrison indicates that so far there has been unease among some teachers because of what the government has offered nurses compared to what is being offered to them.
It has not missed us at all. We do not live in a bubble, as I would have. So we are fully aware, and we're not begrudging of what the nurses are receiving at all. They work very hard. But equally, when it is that you compare in terms of training and the length of time in training and who offsets the cost for that training, we're saying it is only fair and, certainly can't be less than what it is that the nurses are getting. And currently, it is being pitched that the trained graduate is getting $300,000 less than where the RN1 nurse starts.
The JTA president says this is simply unacceptable.
Our teachers are not greedy. We understand that, we will not be getting certainly what they're offering in America, but as long as we're getting a livable wage, that's all that we're asking for. So, and when it is, we would have spent our own monies and would have gone to improve ourselves professionally, then we ought to be we should retain that graduate allowance and that which incentivizes the teacher.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Complaints from rural farmers about little to no agriculture investment stifling growth has caught the attention of Sector Minister Pernell Charles Jr. Mr. Charles Jr. says he is now focused not only on investments, but removing the other growth hindrances as well. He was speaking at the Jamaica Stock Exchange's 18th Regional Investments and Capital Markets Conference. The Agriculture Ministry is on a drive to make the sector more attractive to investors. Agriculture Minister Pernell Charles Jr. says several challenges have been identified which will be addressed to reach that goal. Currently, farmers, especially those in rural areas, have been complaining about the lack of financial resources and investments to expand their production. Minister Charles Jr. says that will change in time. In the meantime, he says there are other opportunities for investments in the sector.
The best investment now is certainly in the post-harvest capacity. If you are interested in putting up facilities for warehouse and cold chain storage facilities, you cannot lose. If you're interested in putting up processing plants for extending of the range of products, for instance, our banana chips and puree and all of these other range of things that we can provide for the global market, you can't lose.
Mr. Charles also noted that there is untapped possibilities within the country's fisheries sector.
When you look on pelagic fishing, like the deep sea fishing, we have tuna that is swimming past us and going elsewhere. And it just requires investment in equipment to capture those before it goes. So that's one easy market. You're looking on sea urchins and other different types of animals and products that could be easily, that would not even meet half of the demand that we have right now waiting. This is not market demand that we have to create. These are persons now knocking on our door saying, please.
However, he cautions that despite seeking increased investment in the agricultural sector, the environment must be prioritized as there is a ripple effect.
We need to invite the kind of large, long-term investments from persons who understand that balance that is required between the economic return and the environmental sustainability. Because climate change and environment is directly, inextricably connected to agricultural resilience.
Scores of commuters, including school children, were left stranded this morning as residents blocked sections of the Silent Hill to Top Alston Main Road at the Northeast Manchester-Northwest Clarendon border for the second time this month. The residents have been complaining about bad roads and the lack of potable water. The residents told our news centre that a meeting was scheduled with Member of Parliament Philip Henriquez. However, he did not show up. They say they feel disrespected by the action of the MP and that their frustration has now reached tipping point.
The Member of Parliament does not care about us, so we need somebody to really see what is going on and hear what is going on in the community. No road, no water. We cannot find him at any time to complain to him about anything. It's as if we don't have a Member of Parliament in Northwest Clarendon. Well, going forward, we would love better representation. If he cannot provide that representation for us, then we would love to have a new Member of Parliament, someone who can help us to get water, someone who can help us to get a road, street lights and all those other things.
The gate to the NWC pumping station was also padlocked as part of the protest. And it's now time for the Business Minute.
Economic opportunities are expected abound for Jamaica through the establishment of the German ship repair Jamaica shipyard. The project will provide dry docking for commercial vessels up to 20,000 tons and a range of maintenance and repair services to vessels operating in and around the Caribbean and Central America. However, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says while happy to launch a new industry, a lack of adequate labor continues to be an issue.
This government will implement a policy to engage those unattached young persons who can be trained and bring them into the labor force. And this is something that we will have to be instrumental about and deliberate about, because it is now not just a social imperative, it is an economic imperative if we are to sustain the growth possibilities that we are now seeing.
And according to a forecast by the United Nations on Wednesday, the global economic growth will fall significantly to 1.9% this year. It says this is as a result of the food and energy crisis sparked by the war in Ukraine, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, persistently high inflation, and the climate emergency. The UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs said the current global economic slowdown cuts across both developed and developing countries, with many facing risk of recession in 2023. The report said this year's 1.9% economic growth forecast, down from an estimated 3% in 2022, is one of the lowest growth rates in recent decades. That's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody-Ann Barrett.
And it's now time for the top regional and international stories. In the region, the Barbados economy is forecast to continue on its growth trajectory this year, even though the global economy is expected to slow in 2023. The Central Bank of Barbados, in its review of the local economy, said the economy is predicted to expand in the range of 4 to 5%, and that the CBP anticipates that the resurgence of the tourism sector will not be as rapid as in 2022. The governor of its central bank said the momentum for sustained economic recovery requires increased public and private sector investment. Further afield, 9 Palestinians have been killed during an Israeli military raid in the occupied West Bank, the deadliest in years. The Israeli military said its troops went in to arrest Islamic Jihad militants planning major attacks. The Palestinian presidency accused Israel of a massacre in Jenin, which has been the scene of repeated raids in recent months. The incursions are part of what the Israeli military describes as an anti-terrorism offensive that began last April. And those were the top regional and international stories. And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Karen Madden will have your midday sports report.